welcome to the Reuters event titled Solidify Your MedTech Gen AI Strategies, sponsored by Cognizant. My name is Matic Meglik, and I am Global Executive Director for Industry Partnerships at Novartis, and I'm thrilled to have a really experienced panel today with me here to discuss regulatory business professional angles, services of Gen AI in MedTech. So with me today, Paula Antunes, Global Regulatory Lead from Novo Nordisk, Brandon Randall, VP of Sports Medicine at Smith & Nephew, and Rohit Alimchandani, Head of Life Sciences UK and Ireland at Cognizant. Just to give you a little bit of heads up on the logistics, we'll try to provide as much value as we can since it's a panel discussion setting. Of course, the panelists and myself, our opinions might also be our own, not just official, company positions. And please feel free to type your questions if you have them into the Zoom Q&A feature, which you'll see on the screen there. And we promise to take some time at the end to try to address as many as we can. Also keep in mind, the event will be recorded, and then you will receive, after the event, you will receive the link on your email that you use for registration. Now, in terms of the agenda and scope, we are looking at this, big challenge, right? Because AI in healthcare is a massive topic. And while we all see the potential, we also see that there's a massive amount of hype. And some of that hype is not going to translate into real solutions that create value, but it's just going to be a risk of spending money and effort on something that is not going to generate value. Specifically today, within the AI domain, we just today want to focus ourselves on the generative AI, where we've seen an explosion of companies and solutions and use cases being pitched to us that show this promise, to help MedTech improve quality, safety of products, as well as the increased speed to market. So there's a lot of potential there. But I think, we as business leaders, we sometimes struggle to really understand, to gauge how best to respond to such a hype. And this is what this panel is all about. We've got the panelists here with hands-on experience in this particular space. And they're going to try to provide specific examples of what works, what doesn't, what the learnings and takeaways are. And we're going to try to structure the discussion today for you in 4 steps, which follow a logical sequence in our opinion, which would be, we will start with the opportunity. We're then going to look at how to translate that opportunity into a strategy. We're going to then look at implementation. So how, what are the barriers around implementing that strategy? And then we're going to take a look at what the future might bring, the known and the unknown. And then we're going to have the Q&A. So with that, let's do a quick warm-up round with the panelists. I would love to hear, maybe in the sequence of starting with Paula and then Brandon and then Rohit, a little bit about yourself. And if you can already say a little bit about where you as a company, where are you in this journey?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the introduction, Matic, and hi, everyone. My name is Paula, and I'm specialized in the regulatory affairs area. I've been in the medtech industry for 8 years, always supporting with regulatory advice for medical devices, IVD devices, and of course, a few years ago, I started focusing on AI, use of AI in medical devices, and looking into the regulatory aspects of it. So that's what I'm bringing here today, is the regulatory perspective of how our regulators looking at AI.
Yeah, thanks, Matic, for the introduction. Thanks, Paula, for your introduction as well. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Randall. As Matic mentioned, I lead arthroscopic enabling technologies R&D here at Smith & Nephew, just north of Boston in the US. We're really focused on making patients' lives better and improving a surgeon's ability to perform a surgical procedure in order to enable patients' lives to be better. And it's an exciting time to be in this space, because with us having access to more and more data than we ever have had as a society, and with tools like AI to be able to develop new solutions, to be able to develop new processes or new ways of working, we're focused just on developing better products, more meaningful products, but also looking at ways in which we can develop our products faster and using tools like AI to be able to enable us to do that. So we'll cover that a little bit. I've been in the medtech space for nearly 25 years now at this point, focused in orthopedics, general surgery, robotics, and surgical navigation. Rohit, over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Brandon, and lovely to be here with you, Matic, and Paula and Brandon. So just a quick intro. I'm Rohit. I look after life sciences in the UK&I. I've been in the sector, so in the life sciences sector for almost 20 years, and healthcare for a hell of a lot longer than that, as my grey hair will probably point out, sadly. But I think, Matic, to get to that question, I love the question, which is, where are you in your journey in AI? I think as a provider and Cognizant, our job really is to help our clients meet sort of their digital ambitions. For us, AI has been a massive game changer because it's going to transform the way in which we operate, as long as whilst we are helping our clients transform the way in which they operate as well. So we're actually on quite an interesting sort of pathway on our journey, where we've started building our ecosystem of partners in terms of looking at how we engage with our clients, not in isolation, but with a sort of collective force alongside us, but also really iterating through a responsible AI framework as well that we've been developing, and building our own internal capabilities, which are quite interesting because a number of those capabilities will completely cannibalize what we do today. So actually, very interesting from a journey perspective in the context of, we have top-down sponsorship. Our CEO lives, breathes, talks AI all the time. But I think equally recognizing that it's such a disruptive change in the technology sector that, we will be focusing quite a lot on cannibalizing what we do today, so that we can be more effective in delivering that same value with our clients. So yeah, that's pretty much where we are.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And I think we're going to come back to the topic around building capabilities and how you mentioned partnerships, right? So we're going to come back to that topic. I think it's really important. But let's start now with the opportunity. And the value of having this kind of a set of experts on the call is that there are practical examples that you're going to be able to share, which we would love to hear from you. So maybe we start with, where do you feel that specifically generative AI will be or can be most applicable straight off the bat, immediately, today, or maybe you've already started? So maybe if we can do a round, or whoever wants to start on specific use cases of today. Who would like to start? Brandon, would you?
Sure. I'm happy to start, Matic. So we are currently using generative AI. I would say we're somewhat in the pilot phase still, and we're looking for use cases where we have to generate large amounts of documentation that require large amounts of research and large amounts of what I'll just call brain power in order to get things done. Right? Generation of test reports, generation of clinical evaluation reports for EU MDR submissions, even 510K submissions or regulatory documentation, where you're compiling a lot of information into a solid, concise argument. We have very experienced people on our team who are very capable of doing that, but it takes time. The research in particular, right? Understanding what research is available and how to summarize that research. We have started to experiment with generative AI models that can do that work for us. And so really looking at ways in which to accelerate our pace of development with respect to heavy lift, heavy, timeline type activities, and leveraging generative AI to do that. That's really on the product development side for us. And then even just on the day-to-day housekeeping things, right? Things like taking good meeting notes, right? Generative AI can do that for you, right? It seems like somewhat of a ticky-tack example to give, but I'll tell you, we've actually leveraged that and use it, and it is profound what you get back from a system. We use Microsoft Teams, we use Copilot as our generative AI engine, and it's quite fascinating what you get back in such real time from the systems. So two examples of where we're using it today, and there's plenty more where I think we'll take it forward.
Yeah. So.
Great point on. Sorry, Rohit. Please go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say to that. I think the example that you gave, Brandon, particularly around documentation and summarizing that documentation, or generating content as well, I think those are absolutely spot on. Also, where we see a lot of potential and opportunity, and you talked about new product development in the actual hardware and software testing. I think there's a huge amount of opportunity. Use case generation, use case review, and this is in the context of not completely replacing the human in there, but really accelerating their productivity, right? And giving them a lot more impact. Also, when I look at, it's such a vast canvas, and it's almost a blank canvas, really. You look at reg affairs. So, Paula, this is probably somewhere that'll be of interest to you in the context of complaints management, how you actually read through the 40 or 50 pages, 70 pages of documentation that come in per case, how you prioritize which one to address. All of those sorts of things are really important. And then out for your field service engineers, for example, if you're looking at particular medical equipment, we've got a use case, a production use case that we actually use in a different sector. And this, again, demonstrates the opportunity around how you can reuse so much of the content that you create in AI or the algorithms that you create. We've actually got an agent that's gone in, read through all the documentation in the field for an elevator manufacturer to help their field service agents fix elevators. Now, that's pretty critical stuff. You don't want to be stuck in one that doesn't really work particularly well or hasn't been fixed well. Equally with medical equipment as well, where it is sometimes about life and death. You can actually get robust enough AI to instruct and enable engineers to fix things quickly, address problems very quickly. And then looking at the commercial side, again, a vast canvas around content, image generation, personalization of content. So really a very, very vast canvas. But I think there's some really specific areas that we can target. And the only last comment I would make is that I think whilst I appreciate that we approach this very much from a use case driven perspective, I think one of the challenges that at least I see day to day in working with a number of organizations is, we've got generative AI or AI as the answer, right? Essentially it's the analogy of, I've got that as my hammer. Now I'm looking for nails to hammer in some place. I think we need to take a step back in some ways and really think about how we reimagine future of how organizations are going to operate and the value that they bring, at some point, not now, because now it's a time of that experimentation, to really look at how we work in the context of AI rather than how can AI fix tactical problems that existed before AI was there, if you know what I mean. We need to address some of those problems a little bit more strategically, but I'll just take a quick pause there.
No, that's great. Paula, we would love to hear from you. When you are supporting use cases, what are some of the challenges that or the opportunities that you see when you're dealing with the use cases that you've been working on?
Yeah. So at the organization level, I don't look much at that on how AI improves processes, but on the product level, of course, when we focus on improving patient outcomes or personalized treatment, you are talking about developing products that will have AI, right? And what you do in a department that needs to support that part, the submission, the approval, you need to prepare for that, and the opportunities that we can give that to the company and to the development is to be ready in advance. So when you want to develop a product, you have the infrastructure to do so. So, for example, we have a very big focus in our policy and intelligence department. We focus on mapping forum groups where AI is discussed a lot with other players from the industry, and are active at influencing the guidances and the guidelines that are coming up and regulating AI in the future in the different markets. And in our RA department, we also, need to equip everyone with AI knowledge on what you need to document in terms of developing it, and what are the regulatory pathways. Because until now, they might be fit for purpose, but there will be need to have evolution on that to adjust to these type of products, this type of medical device, which include AI. And then on the quality system, which is basically in a meta company, you need to follow and document and control according to that what the authorities will expect that you show them. We make sure that at least that we are very strong in providing the procedures that are required for a strong cybersecurity and interoperability and data security, because that's something that needs to be in place if you want a product with AI. AI is going to be super interoperable, deal with a lot of data, and it will generate interest from everyone. So cybersecurity is also a big topic. So these are the ways that we are working with AI here.
And I love how all of you collectively you've covered both you've mentioned examples of the core business process like product development. You've given examples of support process improvements like meeting notes, automation, but like Rohit, you also mentioned that AI might fundamentally redesign the way we do things. So like it's not that these processes might be different in the future. And that's great. I wonder if there's any more like tangible use cases. The one twist I would like to give is, have you given any thought on the maturity of this technology today and whether you're already able to understand or even build an ROI calculation, or is it still saying, look, we believe this is going to happen, so we're willing to go this way? Or is it already like we know how much to invest because this is going to generate this much value specifically? Who would like to give it a go? Paula, would you like to start? You're unmuted.
Yeah, I can do so. I think it's the second one. It is, of course, so for a regulatory department, of course, the business case is there. I mean, if not investing in equipping the company with that would mean that you cannot develop products with AI because it's a regulated product and you need to be ready. So there it's just, you have to do it, right? If you want to go that path. So the investment there is sure. In terms of products, I think it's difficult. It's difficult to build a business case, and we are still in an early phase, at least for the products that I work within in digital health. Yeah.
Brandon, Rohin, anything to add?
Yeah, so we haven't done, I'd say a specific business case to, suggest that, our investment in AI, either, standard AI or generative AI is worth the return, right? But it would be easy for anyone on this call to just do a bucket, right? Pick several use cases of where you can apply it. What is the value of that to you, and how much is it worth to invest in that, right? And I think you'll quickly see that it's definitely worth the effort, right? On the product side, where I work, we have several applications now in the AI space that drive better efficiency, reduce OR time, and it's really easy to calculate then from a customer perspective or an end user perspective what the value is to them. So it's exciting for us because we see at every turn a different way in which we can apply AI to improve our customers' lives, to improve our own lives. We used to talk a lot about, is it worth it? We used to, spend time on generating specific business cases, but now I think it's a given that it's a must. And so we focus less on, is it worth it, and more on, in general, what value is it going to bring, and how fast can we go, quite frankly, in that space.
Yeah, I would entirely agree with that, Brandon. I think what we're seeing out in the marketplace as well is the fact that I think people aren't grappling with, and I think at some point, Matic, someone's going to say, look, what's the actual ROI of this, okay? But I think it is very much, people see this almost intuitively as an existential sort of pivot that they need to make, because they know that the capability that AI can offer is going to create, and if you use that capability correctly, you can create huge competitive advantage in the longer run. So what we're seeing with a lot of organizations is, okay, we need to figure this out. And what we need to do in terms of figuring it out is experiment with it and try it out. I don't think we can say anybody has very confidently adopted it yet, at least from what we see out in the broader marketplace. But everyone's trying it out. Everyone's trying to figure out what's going to be appropriate for them, purely on the basis that as a technology, it's evolving so quickly. A generation in AI is 3 to 6 months maximum, and then you're in the next gen set of products. GPT 3, 3.5, 4.0, barely within a year, we've seen that evolution. So with a sort of 3 to 6 month generational cycle in AI, I think people are not confident enough to say, I'm going to adopt this platform and this technology. So I think that's one aspect of it, which is, that people are experimenting with it. I think the kinds of experiments that people are running is really interesting as well. So some are actually saying, okay, I'm going to use, products that are out there in the wild, and then we're going to essentially run some use cases on it and look at how we drive efficiency and optimization. Some are thinking, okay, how do I embed it into my core business? So focus on top line generation. But others are saying, look, the power of AI is going to be surfaced through our proprietary data. That's what's going to make it interesting. So they're saying, okay, how do we build our foundational models, fine tune it on our data, and then actually go out there and create that competitive differentiation? So I would say it's sort of those three buckets, but who's delivered the maximum potential for our ROI? I think that's very, very hard to see so far. Obviously, you'd want to bet on someone building their own foundational model, but how successful is it truly going to be? We don't know. So I think it's sort of looking at those three buckets. In the next 3 to 6 months, I reckon people are going to start figuring that out. And as we move into 2025, we should see a sort of stratification of the marketplace into, who are the real leaders and who are the people who are playing catch up.
But it's an interesting point, Rohit. I really like the, because you're alluding to if you're now a medtech company, obviously you're not going to necessarily develop your own, large language models. You're going to rely on state of the art that exists out there. But what you're saying is that where a medtech company can create potentially long-lasting competitive advantage is to be able to utilize own data, and then power the tools through the power of the data. So then a medtech company would just partner like anyone else with other AI providers to have the tools at disposal. But the differentiation might be in the company's ability to structure the data that they are in control of, which is unique to them. Right? This is an interesting twist on the strategy.
Yes, and that I think that prior to your data, your information is every company that we're talking to, and pretty much when we look at Brandon here or Paula, the data that your companies have accumulated over years and years and years of being in business. That's what really is going to be the competitive differentiation, the ability to actually take that data, really create value through AI of that data, gain insights with it, and mash it up with all the new data that's coming in. I think that kind of insight is going to be absolute gold, and that's where you're going to drive it. So that's the step change. The incrementals will be on the on the efficiency play, but the step change is going to be how you actually utilize your data.
And it's a great segue to the question of how to integrate AI into the strategy. And I would love to hear from Paula, from Brandon. How are you approaching, from either from a corporate or maybe from a business function perspective? How are you approaching integrating AI into your overall strategy? Who would like to give it a go? Brandon?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to go first. so I think we've taken the conversation into a really interesting topic, into a really interesting area, and an area that I've been focused on for the last decade or so of my career, which is around, strategy, and I'll say that the intersection of traditional medical devices and technology, right? Technology, including everything, up to and including AI. For me, I always take a step back and I say, what are the three primary problems I'm trying to solve in my role as a functional leader, as an owner of the business, right? And for me, the three areas I'm mostly focused on is solving customer unmet needs, developing products and faster, improving time to market, and then maintaining, if not improving, the quality of our products, right? That's kind of first layer. The second layer then is, all right, what role does technology or solutions like AI help in enabling those three things? And step one is making sure you understand that you need to have a strategy in AI, right? Just experimenting, just learning about it isn't enough, right? You have to bias towards action and bias towards implementation of these types of tools. So on the product side, we spend a lot of time with customers to really understand where they see the value in AI, and what value can we bring as a provider of medical products to help them. So that really ends up in a portfolio of products going forward in the enabling technology space that'll leverage these types of tools, whether it's allowing them to diagnose medical conditions faster, perform a surgical procedure with better accuracy or better efficiency, reduce OR time, etc. On the time to market point, we talked about, just some of the processes and procedures and where AI can make a difference. And then on the quality side, which we haven't talked about yet, there's a lot of data mining that can be done, as Rohit mentioned. I think the key differentiator for everyone's going to be is, what data do you have? How well do you understand that data? How do you leverage these tools to be able to gain insights from your data that on the surface wouldn't appear there? But with tools like machine learning, you can really get below the surface to articulate them. And quality is an area, right? Looking for signals in your manufacturing process, looking for signals in your complaints, etc. Right? We have started with areas, investigating in areas like that as well to improve or maintain our quality. So in general, that's the way I look at it. What are the three big problems I'm trying to solve? How does AI layer into it? And then what specifically am I doing for each of those areas to move forward?
I think I can elaborate on how to look at it from how to include that in a regulatory strategy side of it for these products. So normally, how we support teams that are developing products, it's to understand, are using AI to develop the product, but the product that is going to the hands of the patients does not include AI, or is that AI model actually being deployed and get to patients or HCPs or whoever is going to use the product, right? And once that's sorted out, then we map what you need, what type of data you need to generate, and documentation as well, and also justification, and always like why and for what have you used it, and what is the outcome. So we do a huge work on finding the right standards, which have like practical instructions on how to develop such products and document the AI piece of it. Mainly, especially US and China, they have been in the front with this for the last years, and then show. So now, when you want to have access to market to this in the different markets, what you need to show to the authorities, right? I think our main challenge is in this, how authorities are going to be able to support these products, which change very quickly, and that's where the potential of the products live. But how are they going to cope with that? Because the current setup is made for fixed and static products or packs of documentation, and then once you evolve, then you communicate. But to do this to an AI product, you are killing it. You are killing the potential of it. So we try to follow very close what are the strategies that different countries are putting in place, and advise on the projects based on what we see that it's happening and the discussions that are happening around that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I wonder if you have any thoughts also on the privacy side, because also in general media and in more specialist media, there's a lot of discussion around the models used to train the data used to train these models. So have you also come across, from a regulatory perspective, have you come across data privacy being a specific topic that requires a lot of attention?
So because before the AI fever, there was already like a GDPR and other regulations which look into data privacy, and assuming that you're following those, then it's not an additional problem that comes with AI. It's something that is there, and for sure, if you are working with the products that have AI, you need to follow that one, and it's in EU and IPA in US and other ones. Then of course it depends on the set of data, for example, that you need to train an AI model, right? And there, if you need certain specific data which can be personal, I think that it's then we are crossing a line where there's very little flexibility from health systems and other companies to provide. But if you are from a company which you own your own data, then you can actually have an advantage, as Rohit was saying before. So we have not struggled with that yet.
Good. I wonder, Rohit, you have a good overview across the industry. Things that you observe, some patterns maybe, or who is leading the space versus.
So I think if I say who's leading the space, I might upset people. So I'm going to keep a little bit zipped on that, Matic. But in terms of the patterns, I think that's a great question. In terms of the patterns, I think one of the patterns we see. Look, first of all, I do want to say what Brandon said, the points that Paula made, that focus on your priorities, right? That really laser sharp focus on priorities to embed AI into your strategy and say, look, that's what I'm going to actually focus on. When I go and talk to clients, and if I was to go and advise clients to do one thing, it would be that. It would be around build it for the things that matter to you. Don't just experiment with it on the periphery. And I think clients have got that, or the industry has recognized the need for that specificity and the focus. So I would say certainly that's one trend. I think the other trends are around everyone putting together a perspective on what are the right foundations. Now, you touched on it: privacy, cybersecurity, all of those elements. But I think the right data foundations and the right operating model for ensuring that you can actually deliver AI. So everybody's thinking about, okay, I know I want to use AI. I know I have to be very focused about it, but how do I deliver it into the organization? And how do I deliver it into the organization are those elements of privacy, cybersecurity, data foundations. But equally with the operating model, the question that a lot of organizations grappled with was, should I centralize it? Should I have an AI center of excellence? Or should I federate that capability and almost let my business units compete in the development of that AI capability? And actually, what's happened, interestingly enough, is everyone's gone with a very cautious, centralized approach. But we are seeing certain organizations say, I'll have a centralized approach, but I'm going to seed capability within the business units so that they can actually bring context as to how we leverage this. And it also, that's where the competition elements comes in. We're all competitive by nature. Every business unit wants to say, I'm ahead of you, especially in a CEO-sponsored initiative. So we are seeing that the leaders in that space say, yeah, the COE works, but I need something in situ that's actually going to be relevant, who understands my business data to be able to implement that. So we are seeing hybrid models of central control for the enterprise foundation, federated or decentralized control for contextual implementation, right? And that's the approach that most organizations are taking. And I think the third thing is really around, you know, what kind of capability do they develop? Is it in-house? Is it partnerships? That is a really mixed bag, right? So, you know, for me, it's really that, in summary, it's really that, you know, focus on the strategy, get the right foundations, including the model, central versus decentralized, and then figure out what's the right capability build for you. That's what we're seeing in the industry. That's the big three areas that people are focusing on.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I also like the you know, you mentioned before, if you give a person a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So I think to that, to add a layer to the centralized versus decentralized, I guess that it also makes sense for large organizations who can afford to do so, is to say there are use cases where we cannot just say, oh, there's a nice sexy technology, let's figure out how we plug this technology into this, right? But to actually say, let's understand the problem, let's try to solve the problem with whatever is best in solving that problem, regardless if we like the hype of AI or not. So there's still, you know, there are still core processes where you just need to focus on solving the problems, but then you need to have also a dedicated kind of innovation space where you're just gonna, this is our sandbox, and we're just going to play with the craziest innovative ideas and technologies that are out there, right? So there's probably a balance there as well. Huh?
And I think just one point on that, because you make a great point about having that innovation space. The problem that we've seen in some organizations is AI has become, it's so much at the top of its hype cycle right now. Every problem is an AI problem, which, yeah, you know, semantically, you can call it that in some way or form. And I'm sure there's a derivation that you can get to that point, but not every problem is an AI problem. And sometimes you just need, you know, a simple fix, right? So just extending that, I think you almost sometimes need to separate the AI COE from the business as well, because otherwise they're just always looking for how AI will solve the problem. Actually, the business needs its own thinkers to solve the problem. Sorry, Brandon.
Yeah, no, I agree, Rohit. Just a couple comments from my own personal experience here at Smith & Nephew, right? So and to advocate for the hybrid model, which we've adopted here at Smith & Nephew. And quite frankly, I was admittedly opposed to originally because I've built COEs in the past in multinational corporations. I understand how hard it is to build them, and like you said, how competitive it can get between the business units and a COE, right? But it's working quite well here at Smith & Nephew, and a few things that I think have enabled it to work well. One, we've kept the COE small, right? So it's not a massive albatross on the organization that sucks competing resources, both from a talent perspective as well as a funding perspective. It's a small, very focused SWAT team of individuals. That's one thing. Two, they are focused on either pan-enterprise problems, that will provide significant value to the entire organization, a problem in which a specific business unit couldn't prioritize because of the general or broadness of it. Or two, they focused on prioritized use cases that might not have a specific end product in mind, but we know that if we answer a question that we put out there, it would be tremendously valuable to the company. And then three, the competition that it has bred between our business units, because I'm in the sports medicine business, we have AI products we're working on. It's fantastic. And it's a very collegial competition in that everyone wants to learn from each other. And we do that on a yearly basis where we pull everyone who's working on an AI project together, including the CO or B units, to share. But that healthy competition, man, it fuels innovation. So it's working for us. So big advocate for that hybrid approach.
And maybe just a double click on this, because we've touched a little bit the financing piece, right? But if we look at the hybrid model, and if we look at the, so with the COE, is there experience around what type of funding model works best? And I'll just give two examples of funding models for discussion. There could be a case where there was centralized funding for AI projects, maybe led through a larger COE, or there could be funding coming from either the business units or from the countries themselves. So have you seen any of that work better than the other?
It's a good question. So we use kind of we use a centralized approach mostly, right? Where we agree as a leadership team, an R&D leadership team here at Smith & Nephew, how much money we want to put into the AI Center of Excellence. And again, it's a marginal amount, right? It's not an extent where we're over investing in it. And then me as a business unit leader within my sports medicine business can allocate how much dollars I want to put in AI based off the products, the projects, the prioritization, right? So it's a collective leadership discussion. I think that's the most important part, is those conversations shouldn't happen in isolation within a business unit or within a function. They need to be more collaborative and more cross-function. Because again, going back to your early question around strategy, Matic, it goes back to what's your strategy here, and are you applying your dollars appropriately aligned with that strategy?
Great. Yeah, some of the examples that I've seen work were also examples where there was centralized budgets who would be then awarded to either the business units or the countries who were showing the most promising examples, which then created relatively healthy competition. And also created a lot of these kind of fast followers, because when some, either a country or a BU saw the other one doing something, they said, oh, we want to be next. So this it was a kind of a co-contribution model where part budget comes from central, but then the countries or the BUs would still need to kind of, pay a participation fee, like a seriousness fee for that. We started talking a little bit about the kind of the how. So, in terms of how do we build the capabilities? How do we build the models? And there's also, so I would like us to shift into the space of the barriers and the enablers, right? So, and before we go, there's a couple of topics there: the data privacy and regulatory, and the skills and the capabilities and the foundational models, and the whole build versus buy. But we have an interesting question which I would like to start with from Chuck Bolton. He's asking, how are you training your knowledge workers on Gen AI? How are you using it to optimize at an individual workflow level? I think it's a good starting point for us in terms of capabilities and knowledge transfer. So anyone who would like to kick off with this question?
Yeah, well, I can talk about how we do it within our organization, which I think not necessarily it's training people on how to use generative AI is not necessarily a med devices problem. I think it's a sort of much broader issue. And I think, one of the things, Chuck, that you've highlighted is a very, very hard thing to do. To give you an example, most people use generative AI, for example, as even the consumption of the technology, they use it as a search tool. It is probably a terrible, or not probably, it is most definitively a terrible search tool. Google's actually a much better search tool, right? And I think it is about getting the right prompts to develop to allow the AI to develop a picture of you, your context, and then be able to actually use that technology. So learning that particular skill, how we've done it, particularly with Copilot. So this is at an enterprise scale. We've deployed tens of thousands of Copilot licenses across our estate. What we're doing is we've set up a number of microlearning primers, and there is a full curriculum of those microlearning primers that people can just go into and get these little bites of knowledge, if you want to call them that, where they actually consume that and learn a little bit more about how to become more effective with Copilot. So it could be as simple as, how to use it on Teams and transcribe or rather produce meeting notes, as Brandon was alluding to earlier on. Or it could be more complex, such as how can it trawl through all of your Teams repositories and all of your SharePoint repositories to find the right content for you so that you can build your next thought, thought capital piece. So we do that in that particular way. But then what we're also doing is actually persona-driven learning for the different AI products that we are creating. So we've got products that really accelerate developer productivity using generative AI as a co-pilot. Not everybody needs to learn that, but we are doing that bite-sized learning on a persona basis. So it's actually following a slightly more standard learning route. What we are now grappling with is how can we actually transform that learning with generative AI to make it simple for people to learn themselves and empower individuals to teach themselves. So that in itself has become a use case as we've started to roll out this particular learning. Now, unfortunately, I'd love to say that I'd solved that. And if I had, I'd be, out there evangelizing it to everyone. But we haven't quite resolved that. That's something that our AI research team is working through and figuring out what's the best way to do it. Not the how you consume information and self-teach, but actually what's the best way to serve that information that's going to really empower your learning pathway. So just in summary, essentially simple bite-sized standard learning, curriculum-based learning, and then persona-driven learning with the next extension of actually the next gen of learning, which is how do you make it more immersive through generative AI. That's the approach we've adopted.
Mm-hmm. And that covers the current workforce that you have that you need to transition or you have to prepare. But I guess when we look at capabilities, how to build the right capabilities, there's also a question of the types of future profiles that you would want to hire to be ready, but also a question when it comes to capabilities beyond just the people, the capabilities which you either develop, you maybe buy, or you partner for, right? So we've heard from Paula that when it comes to the regulatory layer, that one seems to be one of those core. So my assumption, from what Paula said, would be that's something that you would probably want to control really well. Paula, feel free to add, but I would love to hear from you your key takeaways based on your experience around the kind of the build versus buy versus partner when it comes to specific capabilities.
Yes. So in terms of, so if you start with the capabilities, can you hear me well now?
We can hear you okay, yeah.
Yeah. So if you start with capabilities, it's very interesting that in the regulatory field, and being in a company where you have drug and medical device, right? Like when you deal with those regulatory paths, you have a knowledge in pharma and you have a knowledge in engineer and then maybe some law, right? But now you have guidance on how to tools or how to use AI in drug development or in drug manufacturing. Also in medical devices. So you need to learn this so you can integrate the correct data when you are preparing a submission of a product for approval. So this is, so what should we do? Are we now asking everyone that has a standard education on a traditional course that now you need to include AI? Are we going to, do you need to ask for extra education on that, or are we going to provide that in the company? But because it's needed, otherwise you can't communicate with the authorities at the level that is needed, or with the development, or with commercial, or with everyone that basically builds the product and the claims and the indications for use and all that. So it's a very interesting topic that we have on our side.
And it would seem that for some of these technologies that are today, we see them as quite innovative, and people are either trying them out or not. There's a choice, right? There's a choice to try or not. We could potentially conclude that, like email, like the internet, things that were at a certain point of time considered very innovative are now standard. So you have to use them. So I think if I look at the state of development, I could easily foresee a future where use of Copilot is just a de facto standard. If you don't use it, you're already behind, right? So that's, I think, to Rohit's point around training and to your point, it seems like where it's a foreseeable future, one that could easily foresee. Brandon, thoughts around kind of build, buy, partner?
Yeah, no. So we've done all three in my area, right? So we are currently in the build phase, heavy build phase. The build phase is based off of a buy that we did a few years back, right? Noticing that there were certain capabilities or competencies we needed within our R&D organization that would have been much more difficult to go outside and hire and build. Rather, we could make a small acquisition, right? And I think that's one of the exciting things about this area is there are enough, dare I say, garage type startups, right? Small startups, 5 to 20 individuals who have an idea, who are building a tool, building a solution to a problem, that haven't monetized it yet, that for a large company like Smith & Nephew or other large med tech companies would be a likely target for an acquisition. So we've done that. And then on the partner, we continue to do that, and we'll always do that. I've done that my entire career. The partnership comes down to, particularly in this space, really just being able to articulate what is the mutual benefit you're going to get from both parties, right? What is party A and party B going to get that either couldn't get separately? And so that's, in this space in particular, I think it's more of a challenge than in a traditional medical device space. So that's on the build by partner phase. Well, one thing I did want to comment on a conversation we had a few minutes ago was around roadblocks and challenges, right? And you mentioned data privacy, Matic. That is the one thing that keeps me up at night more than anything in the AI or the generative AI space, right? There are certainly challenges with regards to regulatory adoption of AI tools, algorithms, generative AI in the medical device space. I think there is a very robust and healthy conversation going on, at the industry level and at the company level between the different regulatory agencies. I'm confident that is a problem that we will work through and address at the appropriate pace. Maybe not fast enough for us, but we will address it at the appropriate pace. Privacy is an interesting one in my mind, right? Because it's not just a med tech issue, it's a society issue, right? More than anything. And I am starting to see just the impacts that privacy, as an example, has in the technology space, starting to bleed into the med tech space, right? The more that the CEOs from the big tech companies get called in front of, politicians, the US Congress, the Senate, just for, search history privacy on your mobile phone, right? That to me, is a far less, insidious, issue than someone's healthcare data, right? And so that really concerned me is, as a society, how open are we going to be to sharing our data? Because if we're not even open or concerned about sharing browser history or, allowing tech companies to track our engagement with social media, how willing are we going to be as a society to give up an X-ray for anything, right? Or the statistics on our biometrics to anything? That to me, I think, over the next 5 to 10 years is going to be a real focus of conversation.
Yeah, and even today we could continue for 2 hours just on this single topic easily, right?
Absolutely.
As we don't have those 2 hours, I would love to quickly hear from Rohit as well on the build versus buy versus partner, and then we've actually got 2 more questions. So we'll try to, if we get quickly from Rohit, we'll try to address at least one of them. So.
I'll be quick. Look, I think for me, I think what you need to do is just to add a bit of color, because I do agree with what Brandon said. I think just adding color to a little bit of build versus buy, you need to have core in-house capability that understands your data and your context. But to be able to really innovate, you need to have an ecosystem of partners, not a partner, but a clutch of partners that are aligned to your AI goals that you actually use to drive you forward, so that they can bring in an outside-in perspective, but equally they can help you scale. Because eventually you're going to move on from experimentation into scaling. You're going to need that. If you need to build that in-house with the kind of challenges and how to actually build that much talent internally that you're going to face, it's not worth it. Go partner with someone, build that ecosystem of multiple partners. You'll be able to scale it much more effectively, much more quickly.
Yeah, and we've got a very interesting question from Maida, right, which I would love to see if we can handle, which is around one of the use cases we've not touched upon, but I think it's very relevant for the audience as well. Some examples. So the question: some examples of this have been given already, but in general, what challenges have you faced in implementing AI for patient education, and how have you addressed them? So now we're looking at patient-facing use cases. This is specifically around education, but there's others. Anyone who would like to start on this one? It's a tricky one, right? I can share some of my own experience. We have tried to roll out this kind of tools, so kind of AI, even though it was a little bit earlier before it was, they were still called chatbots, and they were by far not as powerful as the current language models are. But I think we're still struggling with some of the issues around patient safety, right? So as long as there are still hallucinations, it's hard to guarantee what is going to be told to the patient. And we're operating in a very strict regulatory environment, and the potential risks and damages if you make an error and something happens to the patient, these are huge. So I don't think big companies are willing to risk it. I'm sure there's going to be smaller companies and startups who are just going to say, yeah, whatever, we're just going to do it regardless, right? Because there's not much to lose. But if you're a big organization, you're not going to risk it. You're going to make it right, which means you're going to wait until you're sure that it's not going to harm the patient. Rohit, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. And the only point I was going to say is it's a risk reward element there, but the risk is so high that people don't want to actually embrace that. But once we start mitigating elements of that risk, the reward is that extra personalization and direct feedback from patients. So I just feel that companies today aren't quite there yet, at least from what we see out in the industry.
But it will happen, right? It will happen.
Absolutely.
For me, it's going to be probably one of the major disruptors in terms of the personal ability for us to deliver personalized care to patients. I think it's going to be massive, right?
Absolutely.
We just really get it right? Great. We are close to the top of the hour. So I'm going to use this moment to thank the panelists. It's been great hearing from you. You've come from so many different angles. You've got so many different stories and experiences to share. I hope this has been very valuable to the audience. It's definitely been valuable to me. So thanks again for your time, dear panelists. Thank you to everyone who's been listening in. As said, the recording is going to follow. So if you want to follow up with that, you're going to get it in your mailbox. And with that, let's wrap it up. Thanks. Have a lovely rest of the day, and see you next time.